The brochure on my dinner plate said, "Memory care with dignity," but it felt like a receipt for my disappearance. Kara smiled, that careful, professional smile she uses on clients, and Evan stood behind her like a contractor about to demo a kitchen he never cooked in. They talked about safety, care plans, and how this house is too much for you now, and my coffee turned from hot to insult in 3 sentences. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening. From a tin. It was August 25th in Naperville, late heat pinned behind the screens, the kind that makes the fridge hum like a metronome for bad news. Kara put down grocery store lilies and a laminated schedule with color blocks. Doctor Meds tours. "There's a place that can take you as early as mid-September," she said, as if she were telling me about a weekend market. Evan added the word equity like a garnish. "Dad, we can list and liquidate. You'll be comfortable." I saw it then, a corner of paper peeking from under her tote bag. I tugged it free, a crumpled invoice for $2,800. Placement consultant, retainer, paid, dated August 29th. My name sat under client, as if I had hired someone to relocate myself. I didn't say a word. I just let my thumb trace the grout line in the kitchen tile my wife chose in 2006, the same line I'd sealed the summer we thought we had forever. They kept selling me on amenities, movie nights, and a bus to the pharmacy. I kept looking at the door. When they finally left, kiss on the cheek, Evan's cologne like a curtain, my neighbor Mrs. Leduc called over the hedge, "You good, Martin?" I nodded because the other choice was to fall down right there. The voicemail came after the silence. "Hi, Kara. Confirming the September 7th tour for your father." The voice was cheerful, like a waitress reciting pie specials. I replayed it twice, then opened the hall closet and pulled out the red binder with the gold letters. Hail, Family Trust 2019. My wife's handwriting slanted across the first page like a lifeline. We had sat at the dining table 6 years ago, drinking lukewarm tea, while Mr. Ortiz explained how a trust keeps a roof from becoming a target. The deed addendum was there, exactly where I left it, in a plastic sleeve behind the tax bills. Title, held by the Hale Family Trust, successor trustee, me, not owner in the way Kara imagined, but guardian. There was even a clause my wife had insisted on in her tidy voice. If care is recommended, the trustee shall first consider home-based services. She'd underlined that herself. I put my finger on the ink stroke and felt a little of her spine slide into mine. My phone buzzed again. A text from Kara. "We'll make this easy, Dad. You'll thank us later." The word easy rattled me more than placement. I set the invoice on the counter, flattened its crease with my palm, and wrote the date in my notebook anyway. AUG 25, $2,800 paid without asking me. Dusk pushed the kitchen into that blue hour where you can see yourself in the window. I plated the casserole Mrs. Leduc had left last week and couldn't swallow a bite. Instead, I took the binder to the table and stacked what life actually is. Property tax bill 2024, insurance renewal, the notarized copy of my wife's death certificate, the letter from Ortiz on Jefferson Avenue. The house wasn't my retirement, it was my responsibility. There's a difference. I stood, walked the rooms like a night guard, garage, guest room, the hall with the growth chart. Kara at 9, grinning, pencil over her head. "You'll be comfortable?" she'd said. I ran water over a glass, watched the condensation bead, and set the glass down where you could see the ring. Under the kitchen light, the red binder glowed like a siren. I didn't feel old. I felt appointed. At 11:52, the fridge clicked off and the house held its breath. I slid a pen through the binder's rings until it snapped closed, the way a decision does. They'd booked me a tour. I booked myself a chapter. I would read every page before midnight, and then I would act, prudence first. Permission never. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of the lawn crew 2 doors down and the smell of last night's coffee gone bitter in the pot. The red binder sat on the table like a fire alarm I'd pulled myself. I told my knees to cooperate and made a lap of the house, the way I used to walk a building at the end of my facility's shift. Doors, windows, valves. In the garage, a box still labeled Christmas Lights 2006 stared back at me. In the guest room, the closet exhaled my late wife's scent for a second I wasn't brave enough to chase. I tried a piece of toast. It tasted like nothing. I washed the plate, set it back in the rack, and saw my hands shaking. I pressed both palms on the counter to quiet them. The invoice Kara had paid without me, the $2,800 retainer dated August 29th, wasn't a number anymore. It was a decision that had learned to write checks. I slid it into a clear sleeve behind the property tax bill and wrote in my notebook, 826, file consultant invoice, keep original crease. My wife used to tease that I could organize fog. Now it felt like the only way not to drown in it. At 9:20 a.m., I called the number from the voicemail. A receptionist named Jolene answered like a person who smiles even when no one's looking. "Hi, I'm Martin Hale," I said. "There's a tour scheduled for me on September 7th. I'd like to confirm who booked it." Papers fluttered on. Her end, keyboard, soft clicks. "Your daughter, Kara," she said gently, as if the word daughter were a bandage. "She understood the deposit is non-refundable after September 1st. I wrote that date bigger than all the others, except one, in the margin and underlined it twice. "Could you email me whatever you have with my name?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "We have a brief intake form and the tour confirmation." The email arrived at 9:24 a.m., subject line bright and cheerful. "Welcome, Martin." I printed it on my laser printer that still smells like a radio when it warms up, and I slipped the pages under the trust's first tab. Around 10, I sat halfway down the stairs, the same step where Kara once stopped, age 9, to tell me she could tie her shoes without help, and let it hit me. Not anger, not yet. Something heavier than anger, like a grief with good manners. The AC kicked on and pushed cool air against the tears I didn't ask for. I whispered the clause out loud, just to hear it in the air. Home-based services first. My wife's underline felt like a hand on my back. At noon, the doorbell rang and startled the house into a different mood. Mrs. Leduc stood there with a casserole pan and one of those notepads hotels leave by the phone. "Made too much," she said, then looked into my face a beat too long. We ate at the small table by the window. Between bites, she said, "I heard placement last night." The time was about 6:40 because my news came on at the half hour. "And I was mad the weatherman got the forecast wrong again." She held up the notepad. I wrote it down, bad habit from when I worked at the bank. I smiled for the first time that day. "If I needed you to write a statement," I asked, "would you be comfortable?" She nodded. "I'm a notary till December. Wouldn't be the first time I stamped something the wind tried to carry off." After she left, the kitchen felt steadier. I opened the binder to the trustee powers and used a yellow highlighter like a carpenter's pencil. To sell, to rent, to invest, to relocate trust property when in the beneficiary's best interest. The word prudence sat there like a chair waiting for me to sit in it. I circled successor trustee Martin Hale, and a strange thing happened. I felt less small. By 3, I had a legal pad with 2 columns, what they've done and what I will do. Under their column, paid $2,800 retainer, 829, booked tour, 9/7, said equity, assumed consent. Under mine, gather documents, confirm trust powers with Ortiz, request neighbor statement, backup voicemail, email, consider quiet listing. I laughed when I wrote consider. I already knew. Just before 4, I phoned Mr. Ortiz's office on Jefferson Avenue. His assistant, Denise, answered with that clipped competence attorneys grow like orchids. I gave her my name. Hold a moment, Mr. Hale. I expected a calendar negotiation, maybe next week. Ortiz came on at 4:06. Martin, he said, how are you holding up? The question loosened something in me. I'm upright, I said. I need to review the trust. My daughter's moving without me, if you understand me. He did. Friday morning, August 29th, 9 a.m. Bring the binder. Bring any paper that smells like a decision. I looked at the invoice under plastic. I have something that reeks, I said. He chuckled once, then dropped back into counsel. We'll take this one page at a time, and we'll do it the clean way. I spent the evening doing small, stubborn things. I labeled a manila folder, House Trust 2025. I put new batteries in the hallway flashlight, and I took photos of each room, angles showing the condition in case anyone tried to narrate. Damage later. At 7:15, I sat on the porch with the binder and the printout of the Welcome Martin email and listened to August dogs complain about nothing at all. When it got dark enough to see myself in the glass again, I went inside and slid 3 items into the safe at the back of the closet. The trust, the printed email, and the invoice with its offended crease. I turned the dial, not because I was afraid someone would break in tonight, but because I needed to hear a lock do what it promised. Wednesday, August 27th, started with a list on a sticky note. Coffee, shower, shoes, copy IDs. I made 3 photocopies of my license and Medicare card because that's what a facilities man does when he's scared. He makes backups. I walked the hall and paused at the growth chart again. You'll be comfortable, Kara had said. Comfort, I realized, had never been my problem. Consent was. At 10:30, I called Maya, my late wife's niece, the one who can turn a phone into a filing cabinet. Uncle Martin, she said, tell me where to show up and what to scan. Friday, I told her. Ortiz's office. Bring a scanner. And bring your good pair of eyebrows, she laughed. The ones that make people tell the truth? Those, I said. I hung up and felt the house exhale with me. By noon, I had a bag by the door, binder, notepad, neighbor's number, a pen that writes on glossy paper. I ate cold casserole standing up and decided it tasted a little like courage the second day. At 5:30, the sun threw gold across the kitchen tile, and I caught a glimpse of my wife in that light, her hand tapping a clause into place. Home first, she'd written. So I would go first. Into the office, into the plan, into the new. Map where I didn't live at anyone's convenience. Thursday would be for sleeping and sharpening pencils. Friday at 9 a.m. would be for turning collapse into the kind of quiet that moves a mountain with a signature. If they'll move you like luggage, move the luggage first. Friday morning, the 29th, I drove down Jefferson Avenue with the red binder riding shotgun. Ortiz's office sits above a bakery. The smell of bread and lemon oil makes even bad news sound like it's being served politely. He stood when I came in, hand out, the same way he did when my wife and I signed the trust 6 years ago. Martin, he said, you brought the binder. That's good. He flipped through pages, his glasses sliding down. You're the trustee. The trust owns the house. You don't need anyone's permission to act prudently. He looked over the rim. You owe prudence, not permission. He printed the trustee powers and underlined a line in blue pen, may sell, rent, or invest trust property for the beneficiary's best interest. That's you, he said. You're the beneficiary and the trustee. If anyone questions, tell them the law doesn't need a family vote. I told him about the invoice, the voicemail, the non-refundable deposit due September 1st. He took notes, calm as a surgeon. Document everything, every word, every cent. Stay lawful, stay factual, he leaned back, and when you're ready, we'll make this official. Before I left, I mentioned my neighbor. She's a notary, I said. Heard the conversation. Ortiz smiled. Perfect. Have her statement signed and dated. We'll add it to the file. He handed me his card. Martin, don't let guilt confuse you for consent. That afternoon, Maya arrived with her laptop and a portable scanner that hummed like a beehive. She took photos of the invoice, the voicemail transcript, the intake email, every text from Kara that said, "Dad, just sign it." She labeled each folder with a joke, kitchen tile 1, 2, 3. "If anyone hacks this," she said, "they'll think it's a cookbook." We backed up everything twice, cloud, flash drive, printed copy. When she left, she squeezed my shoulder. "Aunt Lydia would be proud of this kind of revenge," she said. "Not mean, just tidy." On Monday, September 8th, I met a realtor named Lydia at Ortiz's recommendation. Her handshake was brisk, her lipstick the color of red legal tape. "We'll keep this quiet," she said. "Private listing, trust sale, serious buyers only. Your signature, your rules." She pulled a contract from a slim folder. I signed as trustee, Hale Family Trust 2019. She slid it back, smiling. "No yard sign," she promised. That evening, I drove to Ace Hardware and bought a small safe, $129, before tax, and 2 sturdy file boxes. I picked up a pack of certified mail slips from the post office just in case. The clerk asked, "Big project?" I said, "Just some housekeeping." By September 10th, Lydia had 2 interested buyers. Ortiz began drafting the Hale Irrevocable Care Trust, a secondary vehicle to hold proceeds for my care. Independent, restricted, untouchable. We'd shift funds there the day of closing. I didn't want vengeance. I wanted boundaries that came with routing numbers. On September 12th, I filled out my USPS change of address form in blue ink. "Effective date?" the clerk asked. I wrote October 19th. I didn't know yet that date would become a hinge in the story, but my hand seemed to know it for me. That night, Kara texted, "Thanksgiving at ours this year." I typed a thumbs-up emoji and set the phone face down. The hum of the fridge steadied. My late wife's handwriting on the trust felt like a pulse under my fingers. Planning isn't revenge, it's memory with better lighting. I closed the binder, slid it into the safe and whispered to the house, "We're not for sale, we're just not staying put." When I turned off the kitchen light, the reflection in the glass looked younger than it had in weeks. It looked like someone about to draw a line with a fountain pen and never step over it again. To keep a house quiet, you let the fridge hum louder than your nerves. By the 3rd week of September, the rhythm of secrecy had become second nature. I woke early, brewed coffee in the stainless pot my wife and I bought the year we paid off the mortgage, and waited for the sun to hit the kitchen tiles she'd picked out. Then I started my rounds. The red binder went into a messenger bag, and I became the man no one noticed, the retired neighbor who loves errands. Lydia worked efficiently. 2 couples toured between lunch hours. I'd step outside, pretending to garden, while they admired the open-concept kitchen that had hosted every Christmas since 2006. "The trustee maintains it beautifully," I heard her say. The word trustee rolled off her tongue like armor. September 21st, she called. Offer came in, $905,000 as is close October 24th. I could hear the smile in her voice. We counted at 9:15, settled at 8:90. With a $15,000 repair credit after the roof inspection. I jotted the figures in my ledger: trust inflow, trust outflow, date, initials. My revenge wasn't rage, it was arithmetic. That same night, I opened a new trust account at First Midwest Bank. The teller, a young man with a nervous tie, asked, "Type of account?" I said, "Fiduciary." He blinked. "So, business?" "Family business," I replied, and slid the Hale Family Trust binder across the counter. Ortiz called the next day. "Draft for Hale Irrevocable Care. Trust ready. Maya's name added as co-protector. Income to you. Principal locked until medical. Necessity. No one touches it, not even you, without documentation." I smiled into the phone. "That's the point." Kara texted that evening, "We're flying to Austin Sep 22-25. Dinner when we're back?" I typed, "Safe travels, kid." On Sep 23, the inspection team arrived. I handed Lydia the spare key, nodded to the roofline I'd patched myself. In 2018, they circled, tapped, measured, murmured about shingles and flashing. Later that afternoon, she forwarded the report. Roof aging, recommend $9,700 replacement. We agreed to the $15,000 credit. The buyers stayed in. I made a note beside the number. Acceptance. Proof of good faith. In the quiet afterward, I found comfort in paperwork. Receipts were my allies now. $64 for storage boxes, $49 for moving blankets, $180 for ladder pads. Each line item was another stitch in the net. I taped a new list inside the kitchen cabinet titled Things Not to Forget. My wife's recipe box, her sapphire brooch, the trust binder, and the small ceramic cardinal from her garden. Maya suggested installing a Rio-Link doorbell camera. It's your property, she said. You can document access legally. We set it up together that weekend, laughing at how the voice prompt sounded like an old science fiction robot. Device ready to record. That night, while the doorbell blinked red, I sorted through keys at the dining table, one set in the safe, another in a sealed envelope for Ortiz, labeled in my handwriting, "Deliver only at closing." Before bed, I asked Lydia for a catering contact, pretending to plan a Thanksgiving gathering. She sent a PDF menu titled Harvest Feast for 12. I printed it and slid it into the red binder right behind the trust's signature page. Kara would see it if she snooped. I wanted her to think I was planning gratitude, not strategy. By Sept 24, everything was in motion. Appraisal scheduled for October 3rd. Movers booked for October 20th. My revenge didn't need speeches. It needed signatures. When I turned off the lights that night, I looked around the kitchen one last time and whispered to the empty room, "They think they're sending me away. They have no idea I'm already gone." Nothing is louder than a phone set face down. By the last week of September, the house hummed with its own suspense. I'd taken to keeping my phone upside down on the counter because every message from Kara arrived like a pin pulled from a grenade. On the morning of September 26th, her text landed. "Dad, we need to finalize your facility choice before deposits. They're close." I didn't respond immediately. By noon, another buzz, this time from Evan. "Forwarding you info. Let's make a decision this week, okay?" Attached was the same glossy brochure with stage smiles and Memory Care with Dignity, printed in gold foil. I could almost smell the manipulation in the ink. That evening I replied with 5 words, reviewing options per trust obligations. 3 minutes later came Evan's sharp response. "What trust?" I smiled, a slow, private smile, and set the phone down again. On September 28th, the roof repair inspector returned to confirm the estimate. His ladder scraped the gutters at 10:12 a.m., a sound that sliced through the neighborhood silence. I saw Mrs. Leduc on her porch, pen in hand, making another note in that tiny banker's notebook she kept. That sound, aluminum against aluminum, felt like punctuation. My plan was built on recorded noises, receipts, and other people's carelessness. By the weekend, tension coiled tighter. Kara dropped by September 30th, unannounced. The doorbell camera caught everything, her old key clattering uselessly in the lock, her frown when it didn't turn, her palm pressing the doorbell. "Dad! It's me!" she called. I stayed quiet, watching from the upstairs landing as her eyes drifted to the window where I'd left the red binder deliberately on the armchair, half open, just visible enough. She stared, then left. 10 minutes later, a text arrived. "Can we please talk?" "Like adults," I replied. "Sunday, bring Evan." That Sunday, October 1st, they came with smiles rehearsed like speeches. Kara carried a laptop and a spreadsheet printout labeled Projected Costs of Assisted Living. Evan poured himself water before sitting down. "We're not trying to control anything," he said. "We just want you safe." Kara nodded. Dad, these places have staff 24/7. It's time. I slid across the clause from the 2019 Hale Family Trust, the one my wife had underlined in blue. If care is recommended, the trustee shall first consider home-based services. Evan read it twice, his jaw flexing. Kara frowned. You're not a lawyer, correct, I said, but I buried one, meaning Ortiz, of course, who wrote this very clause for my wife. The silence between us was thick enough to photograph. I leaned back, let the clock tick 3 times, then said, "Funny how a home can feel safest when you stop opening its doors to everyone else." Evan's smile faltered. He drummed his wedding ring against the glass table, ting, 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 and looked at the binder again. I noticed the moment his eyes caught the Thanksgiving catering menu tucked between the pages. His brows flicked up. Kara followed his gaze. "You're hosting Thanksgiving?" she asked, voice tight. "I'll bring something special," I said. They didn't know that special thing was the truth. When they left, I wrote a new line in my ledger. Meeting, Auct 1, attempted persuasion. Clause recited verbatim. 2 days later, October 3rd, the appraisal came back exactly at our sale price, $890,000. Lydia's email subject line read, "Value confirmed, on track for close." I sat at the table, calculator in hand, and whispered the figure like a prayer. The number landed like a gavel. Everything was aligning, dates, documents, even weather. My daughter wanted to send me away by mid-September. By late October, I'd be the one gone, on my own terms, with a cashier's check in my pocket and their silence caught on video. I poured coffee, set my phone face down again, and said out loud, "We'll see who's comfortable now." They left for a trip. I left a lesson. At 6:40 a.m. on October 19th, my phone buzzed with Kara's cheerful text, "Boarding soon. Phoenix for the summit. Back Thursday night." The heart almost made me laugh. I looked around the kitchen one last time, the house still pretending to be theirs in their heads, and whispered, "Perfect timing." That same morning, I drove to the Wheaton 55-plus complex and signed the lease I'd previewed a week earlier. Unit 2B, 1 bedroom facing a maple tree that already looked like fire. $119 to $50 a month. Deposit paid by cashier's check from the trust account. The manager handed me a welcome packet. "Fresh paint last week," she said. "No pets?" "Just memories," I replied. By noon, I was at the post office filling out the USPS change of address form in block letters, effective October 19th. I handed it to the clerk and watched her stamp the top. "There's something beautiful about legal ink doing what love won't." That afternoon, movers boxed my essentials. I labeled every carton with a thick black W for Wheaton. Kitchen, photos, safe. At 3:30 p.m., a locksmith arrived. "New cylinders, both entries," I said. He handed me the old keys when he was done. I dropped them in the trash. Receipt stapled into the red binder. Proof, not pettiness. October 20th, Lydia emailed, "Final. Closing confirmed for Oct 24, 10 a.m. Ortiz called later that evening to review the closing disclosure. Gross sale $890,000. Net after taxes and fees $872,600. Funds wired into the Hale Irrevocable Care Trust. "You did everything clean," he said. "You'll sleep tonight." October 24th, 10 a.m. Ortiz's office. I signed as trustee on 12 separate lines. By 2:15 p.m., the wire hit the trust account. Ortiz printed confirmation. "Funds received, Hale Irrevocable Care Trust, 11247. He slid a cashier's check for $400,000 across the desk. "Initial funding tranche, your care provision." I placed it in my wallet next to my driver's license. It felt heavier than both. At 4:40 p.m., I drove back to the Naperville house for the last time. The late October light poured gold through the blinds. I set one envelope on the kitchen counter addressed to the Hale family file for delivery to successor trustee only. Inside, final ledger, locksmith receipt, change of address confirmation, and Ortiz's letter. Then I stepped onto The porch, pulled a single sheet from my coat pocket and slid it under the Quayer welcome mat. Typed 14-point double-spaced, like the confession I'd never get to give in person. Cara and Evan, as trustee, I have sold the property owned by the Hale Family Trust. I've moved safely. The proceeds are protected for my care per Mum's wishes. We'll talk at Thanksgiving. Dad, the Relink camera blinked red. I looked straight into it and said quietly, "Consent means asking." Then I turned, locked the door behind me, and let the key click. A small, metallic full stop on years of misunderstanding. Their flight landed 8:05 p.m. The camera caught the headlights sweeping up the drive, Cara's hand lifting the mat, the scream when she read the note, Evan's shout echoing off the siding, "He can't do that!" Oh, but I could. I drove toward Wheaton in silence, the binder beside me on the seat, autumn leaves tumbling across Route 59 like confetti for a coronation no one would attend. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had receipts. Turkey carves cleaner than lies. The first snow came early that year, dusting Naperville like someone shaking powdered sugar over guilt. I hadn't spoken to Cara or Evan since the night they came home to the empty house. Just one voicemail, Evan's voice, thick, with restrained panic. "We need to talk, Martin. You can't just disappear like this." Disappear, that was the word they used. Funny, considering they were the ones who tried to make me vanish. I moved through November quietly. Wheaton was colder but freer. I learned the creak of my new apartment floors and the names of every cashier at the corner store. Ortiz kept me updated. All filings complete. Hale irrevocable care, trust funded and confirmed. The $872,600 figure was now more than numbers. It was a declaration of autonomy. Then came the group text on November 15th. "Thanksgiving dinner at ours this. Here 4 p.m. Can you come?" I stared at the message for a long minute, then typed, "Wouldn't miss it." Thanksgiving Day arrived with grey skies and the faint smell of snow. I packed 2 things, the red binder and my wife's stuffing recipe in a foil pan. I wore the same jacket I'd signed the sale in, symbolic armor disguised as corduroy. When I walked into Cara's glass and steel kitchen, the laughter dimmed by a fraction. The place smelled of rosemary and pretense. Evan's parents hovered near the wine rack. Cara greeted me with a careful hug. "Dad," she said softly, "good to see you." Her voice cracked just enough to pass for sincerity. I smiled. "You too, sweetheart, smells good." Dinner began innocently enough, cranberries, small talk, the clink of glasses. But underneath every polite exchange, I could feel the question pulsing. How much does he know? Halfway through the meal, I stood and raised my glass. I just wanted to thank everyone for caring about my future. The room smiled uneasily. "Especially you two," I added, looking straight at Cara and Evan. "You've given me more freedom than I could ever repay." I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker, and placed it on the table. A blue light blinked. "Before dessert," I said, "I want you to hear something." The recording played, the August 25th voicemail from Jolene. "At the memory care facility. Hi, Cara, confirming the September 7th tour for your father." The room froze, forks mid-air, oven humming behind the silence. Then another clip. Evan's voice, the one I'd saved from their kitchen conversation. "Just list the place. He'll sign. It's cleaner." You could hear the turkey crackle in the oven after that. I let the words hang, then pressed pause. "I was told this was about my safety," I said. "But safety doesn't need signatures behind someone's back." Cara's eyes glossed. "Dad, that's not fair." "Fair," I interrupted, "isn't paying a stranger $2,800 to make me disappear." I pulled out a printed copy of the consultant invoice and laid it beside her plate. Her hand trembled. Aunt Jan, bless her lack of tact, broke the silence. "So, who owned the house then?" I turned to her, calm. "The Hale Family Trust. My late wife and I set it up in 2019. I was the trustee after she passed, so when I sold it last month, it was perfectly lawful. I reached into my binder and unfolded the closing statement, the $872,600 figure circled. In red, every dollar now funds my care, not anyone's convenience. Evan's color drained. Kara whispered, "You blindsided us." I nodded. "And you tried to blindfold me." Then I placed 2 envelopes on the table, one marked Kara, one Evan. "Kara," I said, "inside is proof of a $5,000 charitable pledge made in your name to the Home Reach in-home care non-profit. Evan, yours covers a year of therapy for couples who lose sight of compassion." Gasps rippled across the table. I leaned back. "Consider it a down payment on perspective." The oven timer beeped, 3 perfect dings that landed like punctuation. No shouting followed, just quiet. Evan stared at his untouched turkey. Kara's fork clinked against her plate, trembling. Aunt Jan poured herself another glass of wine and whispered, "Well, this is different." I closed the binder, slid it into my bag and said softly, "Dinner's over, lessons served." As I walked to the door, I heard the sound I'd been waiting for, Evan exhaling. He really did it. The latch clicked behind me like the final page of a chapter turning itself. In the car, the snow began to fall heavier. I whispered to the windshield, "You wanted to send me somewhere safe. I found my own." Then I drove off into the white, the warmth of vindication steady as a pilot light behind my ribs. Justice sounds like paper sliding across a table. In the quiet after Thanksgiving, even my phone seemed reluctant to ring. The Wheaton apartment had a hush that felt earned, the kind of silence you only get when you've put the right things in writing. I unpacked the last of my boxes, hung my wife's framed garden photo above the desk, and turned on the small lamp that made the room glow like her laughter. By Monday, December 1st, the fallout had started to ripple. Ortiz forwarded me an email from Evan Hale, subject, legal inquiry. The body was short and angry. "We believe my father-in-law sold the house without proper consent. We're exploring legal options for elder exploitation." Ortiz called me as soon as he read it. His tone carried the steady warmth of someone who's seen every trick in the family playbook. "Martin," he said. I replied directly, "Documented. Trust powers, notarized sale, independent trustee authority, irrevocable care, trust with restricted principal. You've got the cleanest paper trail I've ever seen." I laughed softly. "Paper beats panic," he chuckled. "That's one way to put it." 2 days later, December 2nd, Kara asked to meet. We chose a bench along the Naperville Riverwalk, where the water looked like dull silver and the air bit with early winter. She wore her long coat, the one she used to borrow from her mother. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "I saw the numbers, Dad. You really did sell it." "I really did," I said. "And I really kept it legal." She blinked, fast, eyes shining. "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked out over the frozen river. "Because you didn't ask me. You asked around me." She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, "I was scared. You fell in May. I thought—" "I fell," I interrupted, "because the ladder was old. Not because I was." Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time in months I saw my little girl again. Not the project consultant who thought love came with spreadsheets. I pulled the red binder from my briefcase, the edges softened from use, and placed it between us. "This isn't a weapon, it's a map," I said. "Every choice I made is in here, dates, receipts, even your signature on that consultant invoice." She winced. "I didn't think you'd see that." "I did," I said quietly, "and I didn't stop loving you for it." Justice, to me, has never been about punishment. It's boundaries with receipts. I handed her a small envelope, a copy of the non-profit pledge confirmation from Thanksgiving and the therapy voucher I'd given Evan. "Make something good out of the part that hurt," I told her. "That's how your mother fixed things. She turned guilt into gardening." For a long time, Kara didn't say anything. Then she whispered, "Can we try again?" We can, I said. But we do it by the book this time. When she left, she hugged me like she meant it. For once, she didn't smell of deadlines, just vanilla and the cold. On December 5th, Ortiz emailed me the final trust ledger. Total proceeds, $890,000. Net transfer, $872,600. Distributions documented. Funds laddered into 9-month CDs and a conservative bond fund. I printed the email, slid it into the back of the binder, and smiled. The last page had a line from my wife's handwriting, faint but still legible. Home first, always. In my small Wheaton apartment, with the heater clanking and snow tapping the window, I made coffee and opened the blinds. The world outside looked clean, like something freshly notarized. Kara's text came through at 7:02 a.m. Photo of our old kitchen tiles. Her message beneath it, I get it. I hate that I get it, but I get it. Can we try again? I wrote back, you already started. The reply bubbles came, then disappeared. That was fine. Justice doesn't always need an answer, just acknowledgement. You can forgive a storm and still buy shutters. By the second week of December, the snow outside my Wheaton apartment had turned the parking lot into a clean white ledger. No tire, tracks, no footprints, just a blank page that belonged to no one. I started each morning the same way. Coffee, newspaper, and a slow walk past Memorial Park, where the frozen pond looked like a contract signed by winter itself. My days felt simple again, almost monastic. At 10 a.m., I'd call Maya. She'd always answer with her usual humor. Uncle Martin, you out causing lawful chaos today? I'd tell her about the latest grocery delivery from Casey's, or the maintenance guy who fixed the heater and called me sir twice. We'd laugh. She'd remind me that Ortiz said I was the most well-documented retiree in DuPage County. Inside the apartment, I'd hung a photocopy of my wife's clause, the one that saved me, framed above the kitchen counter. If care is recommended, the trustee shall first consider home-based services. It looked like a lighthouse in a stormy painting. Every time I read it, the noise of those August days faded a little more. Kara began to reach out, not through lectures or links, but short messages done right. Can I visit Sunday at 2? Do you need anything from Costco? One afternoon, she texted a photo of her and Evan hanging the same Christmas lights I used to untangle every year. Her caption was small. I finally figured out your system. When she visited, she noticed the binder on the coffee table. Still keeping score, she teased, trying to sound light. Not score, I said. Record. Scoreboards end games. Records teach lessons. She turned a page and saw the faded ink from her mother's handwriting. For the first time, she didn't flinch. Mom always knew how to write rules that didn't sound like rules, she murmured. That's because she wanted them to be read, not obeyed, I said. We talked for an hour about the house, about guilt, about her fear that care meant cages. I told her what I'd finally realized. Love isn't about who decides. It's about who respects the decision. She nodded, quiet tears marking her cheeks. After she left, I wrote a letter to myself on plain stationery, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it to my own address. When it arrived 3 days later, the postmark became proof. Inside, just one line, I will not be moved like furniture. That envelope joined the safe, right next to my wife's brooch and her recipe box. On December 12th, I invited Mrs. Leduc over for hot chocolate. She arrived in her snow boots, cheeks pink, still keeping her little banker's notebook in her coat pocket. You did everything right, she told me. It's a rare thing to see honesty win quietly. I handed her a poinsettia wrapped in brown paper. Your witness statement felt like a handrail on bad stairs, I said. She laughed, embarrassed. You make justice sound poetic. By the end of December, I had 3 calendars pinned on the Wall medical checkup, January 9th. Trust review, February 1st. Family dinner, December 25th. Tentative. The old me might have dreaded that empty slot beside family. The new me saw it as space I had earned. Christmas lights blinked on balconies outside my window, reflected faintly in the glass like slow applause. I sipped my cocoa, looked at the red binder on the table, and thought about the note I'd left. Under the mat, the one that made them scream, a single page, 12 words long. And somehow it had rewritten everything. People change or they repeat. Paperwork helps either way. January came in brittle and bright, the kind of cold that keeps only truth standing. My Wheaton apartment had settled into a rhythm. Heater clicks, coffee pot sighs, the steady quiet of a life that finally belonged to me. On January 4th, Ortiz called. Evan's attorney sent a letter, he said, amused. Request for accounting, related to the house sale. Of course he did, I said. When logic fails, they try stationery. Ortiz chuckled. I replied this morning. 1-page cover, attached trust accounting, notarized signatures. No spin, just structure. That letter might as well have been a mirror. Everything reflected exactly as it happened. $890,000 sale. $82,600 net, $400,000 transferred to CDs, $472,600 invested per care trust guidelines. Every expense itemized. $11,400 movers and storage, $4,200 attorney title, $1,950 deposit, $2,800 consultant retainer. Documented as unauthorized expenditure by non-trustee. Paper justice. A week later, Kara showed up alone. No appointment, just a text. Can I stop by for coffee? She looked smaller somehow, or maybe the guilt finally fit her frame. I've been thinking, she said, staring at her mug. I was scared, Dad. You fell last spring and work was crazy. I thought I was helping. You were managing me, I said. It's not the same thing. Her eyes filled. I'm sorry. I let silence do its work before I answered. Fear isn't a signature line. That broke the tension. She let out a wet laugh, the same half sigh her mother used when the truth stung but healed. We sat for 2 hours. No anger, just repairs. Before she left, she said, You always kept Mom's house immaculate. I just didn't understand it wasn't about flaws. It was about promises, I said. Later that week she came back, with stationery. Let's write something down, she suggested, our version of a treaty. We called it the Family Care Charter. On lined paper in simple ink, we wrote 3 rules. Ask before acting. Read before assuming, help without handcuffs. We both signed it and taped it inside the cabinet door above the coffee maker, the one where I used to keep my move list. It looked right there, beside the jar of sugar. By early February, the world thawed a little. I decided to send $1,000 from my personal checking account, not the trust, to the senior legal clinic that answered my dumbest question 6 years ago, when we'd first drafted the Hale Family Trust. I printed the email receipt, wrote for kindness and clarity, and filed it behind the final ledger. On February 10th, my phone rang again. Evan. His voice was different this time, sanded down. Martin, I owe you an apology. Go ahead, I said. I called you stubborn. I thought we were helping, but we were just pushing. Pushing happens, I said. It's what you do next that counts. He exhaled. You said it'd be cleaner. You were right. I said lawful. I corrected gently. Clean came later. He laughed once, awkward and human. I'll take that. Before we hung up, he asked, Will you come for Thanksgiving next year? Maybe, I said. Depends who carves. We both smiled into the static. When I hung up, I made a note on a sticky and pressed it onto the binder's cover. Never argue. Document. Then I poured coffee, opened the window, and let the February air roll through. The world outside smelled cold and honest. Kara texted that night, "You'll bring your stuffing again, right?" I replied, "I'll bring the binder too, just in case, because sometimes the surest piece is a signed page, and the promise that this time everyone read it." The house sold, the home stayed. By March, the worst of the cold had passed, and Wheaton felt like a fresh page. The maple outside my window had traded ice for buds, and the world seemed to remember that it could soften. I spent mornings walking to the corner cafe, greeting people who only knew me as Mr. Hale, who tips in singles and smiles at dogs. It was nice being just a man again, not a case file or a lesson. One morning, a letter arrived in an unfamiliar envelope, cream-colored, the handwriting neat but unsure. It was from the new owners of the Naperville house. Inside was a photo, a little boy standing in the kitchen, grinning by the pantry door. The floor tile gleamed, the same tile my wife had chosen 20 years ago. They'd written, "We love your home. We found a tiny toy dinosaur under the baseboard near the vent. Did it belong to one of your kids? We kept it safe." I held that photo for a long while. The past didn't sting anymore, it warmed. I took out a note card, wrote a short reply, and slipped it into the envelope that came with my electric bill. "Thank you for keeping the house kind. That toy belonged to my daughter. It's fitting that it's still there. You bought more than property. You bought peace." When I set the pen down, the apartment felt fuller, like someone had just whispered closure. April bloomed fast. Kara started visiting more often. We cooked together in my small kitchen, her chopping vegetables, me telling her how her mother used to hum when she cooked. She'd ask, "Do you miss the house?" "Not the house," I said. "The noise of it, the kind that used to mean life." By May, she was ready for the next step. "Mother's Day. Dinner at our place," she said. "No surprises, just family." That Sunday I put on my best blazer, tucked the red binder under my arm, not as a weapon now, but as a keepsake, and drove back to Naperville. Their new home wasn't as big, but it was bright, alive, honest. At the table I placed my wife's sapphire brooch in a teacup at the center. Kara smiled through tears. "She'd like that," she whispered. Evan carved the roast, careful, respectful, like a man finally aware of what a knife can do besides cut. We ate. We breathed. We didn't litigate. After dessert, Kara asked, "Do you ever regret it?" I looked at her, then at the window where sunlight painted everything gold. "No, I regret waiting so long to act. Dignity doesn't arrive when invited. It's something you have to sign for." That night, back in Wheaton, I stood by the balcony watching the streetlights flicker on. My geraniums, bright red against the dusk, looked like stop signs for old pain. I opened the red binder one last time and tucked a new card into the back sleeve. I was not sent away. I went where I choose. Then I looked at the framed clause above my desk, my wife's handwriting steady and kind, and whispered, "You didn't lose me, Kara. You just forgot to ask me first." The wind caught the curtain, lifted it gently, almost like an answer, and for the first time since that August afternoon, I turned off every light and slept without leaving the binder on the nightstand. Because some stories don't end with revenge. They end with proof that I still belong to myself. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.